I'm not talking about calories. I'm talking about how, if you want to excel at a particular sport or physical activity, you need to change your food accordingly. And I'm going to explain that to you. Hi guys, Dr. Bobby Striker here with Flow Physique Factory. We're going to get into some really interesting stuff today, a bit sciencey, but it's going to be very useful for you. And I've not really seen other guys talking about this stuff, so stay tuned. But before we get into it, do remember to like and subscribe, hit the bell button for notifications, and please do drop us a comment, let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see in future videos. Now let's get into it. Okay. If you want to optimize your training, you need to know a little bit about muscles and metabolism. Metabolism is basically how we kind of get energy out of the food we eat. Now, this presentation today is going to be a bit of an oversimplification, but it's going to give you a crucial understanding to help you kind of really maximize your training results and hit those goals. You know what I'm saying? So let's get into it. Number one, let's talk about muscles, okay? Basically, we're going to keep things pretty simple. There are two types of muscle fibers. You've got type 1 slow twitch muscle fibers, and you've got type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers. And fast twitch muscle fibers, they're kind of selectively recruited when we need to move fast, we need to do things quickly, and you need a lot of power, but they can exhaust quickly too. So you can only kind of use them for short periods of time. So they're useful for high energy workouts like sprinting, weight training, tennis, golf, things like that. And then you've got your slow twitch muscle fibers. Now, they're used for more kind of low intensity activities, which can be sustained over long periods. So it can be like slow cardio, walking, endurance activities like marathons and stuff like that. So they kind of use different muscle fibers. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, because these different muscle fibers, they are fueled differently. So if you want to optimize your training and get the best results possible, pay attention. This is going to get sciencey, but I'm going to give you crucial facts. Let's do it. Okay. Now, basically, there are three energy systems within our muscles. Okay. You got number one, the ATP-CP pathway. Okay, sounds sciencey. Just bear with me, guys. Bear with me. I'm going to simplify it. ATP-CP pathway. Number two, the glycolytic pathway. And number three, the oxidative pathway. Okay. Now, all exercises, regardless of what you do, even if it's endurance or if it's sprinting or whatever, they all follow these three pathways in the sequence that I've just mentioned. Always start with ATP-CP, then it goes to the glycolytic, then it goes to the oxidative. Okay, so it doesn't matter what activity you're doing, it goes through this kind of cascade, this sequence of energy pathways. So your body starts with the ATP-CP pathway. ATP is adenosine triphosphate, CP is creatine phosphate. Now, this pathway is anaerobic, so it doesn't require oxygen. You know, when you're going to pick up something like a heavy weight and you want to pick it up instantly, you haven't got time to get loads of oxygen into your muscles. So your body depends on energy stores which are already there within the muscles themselves. And how do we store this energy? We store it as ATP. Adenosine triphosphate, to give your muscles instant energy when you need it. Now, ATP is broken down to ADP, and in doing so, energy is released, and CP is then used to convert ADP back to ATP so it can be used for energy again. CP is creatine phosphate. Now, the problem is that your muscles can only store a very small amount of this stuff, and that's why people take creatine. You've heard of creatine, right? Creatine phosphate. This is exactly why people take this supplement, to increase the amount of creatine you have in your muscles at rest, so that when you work out, you've got that little bit of extra creatine there to allow you to kind of boost your performance and work out that tiny bit, little bit harder, and maybe get some more gains as a result of that. But, there's always a but, isn't there? Under all our conditions, if you're really pushing yourself as hard as you can, this pathway, this energy pathway, can only last for about 10 to 15 seconds. You heard right. 10 to 15 seconds. It can only produce enough energy to sustain activities for 10 to 15 seconds. So if you're exercising or doing any activity which is lasting longer than 10 to 15 seconds, your body's going to switch to the next pathway. That's when the glycolytic pathway kicks in, pathway number 2. Now, this is where your body has to break down carbs for energy. Yeah. So your body uses glycogen, which is kind of stored in the muscles. That's a sugar stored in the muscles it's themselves. Or your muscles can use glucose being delivered in the blood, and that will help to convert ADP back to ATP. Now, this pathway is anaerobic too, meaning it also does not require oxygen. But this is a slightly different pathway, and there is a consequence. There's a byproduct. You get lactic acid production. That's the waste product of this pathway. So when you're working out and you're getting that kind of burn in your muscles, and you think, you're getting that burn, that's the lactic acid burn. That's lactic acid buildup. I think we're all familiar with that. Anyone who's worked out, especially on the old leg extensions, and your quads really start burning, that's lactic acid. Yeah. And think about when you're lifting weights, how long are you lifting weights for? It's probably going to be 1 minute, 2 minutes. So you're probably well into this glycolytic pathway. Now, if you train and your body becomes fitter and conditioned, you might be able to stay in this pathway a bit longer. Yeah, you can always condition yourself, but still, this energy system is kind of used up in anywhere between about 90 to 120 seconds. So again, this pathway doesn't last very long either. But typically, if you're doing weight training, this is where you're going to be. This is going to be your home most of the time. You're going to be in the ATP-CP pathway and then in the glycolytic pathway, 90 to 120 seconds. Because most sets, if you think about it, you're not going to be doing a set for 2 minutes or 5-minute sets. Nobody does that. When you're doing the classical kind of sets, like 3 sets or 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps, those sets are typically going to last in this kind of time frame. Okay. Now, finally, once the glycolytic pathway is exhausted, your body starts to use the oxidative pathway, oxygen. So finally, there's a final energy system which requires oxygen. So unlike the other two, this is the only pathway that can use fat to produce energy. Yeah, the others cannot do that. Yeah, the others are either ATP-CP, energy stores within the muscles themselves. Glycolytic pathway uses sugar either in the muscles or being delivered. Then you've got the third pathway, which can use sugar as well, but it can also use fat. And it's the only one of the 3 pathways that can use fat to produce energy. It's a much slower pathway. It takes longer to produce energy, but that's how this kind of energy system works. And hence, this is the energy system in use for long-term sports and activities, for endurance activities. Now, at rest, when you're using this pathway, about 70% of the energy comes actually from fat and not carbs or protein. So you can see this is quite a unique and unusual pathway. As the exercise intensity increases, the ratio kind of shifts. You can end up using more carbs and glucose. But if carbs aren't available, then your body might actually even start to catabolize itself. Yeah, catabolism. We've talked about that before, right, guys? Which means you're going to start breaking down the muscles themselves to produce energy. Okay, so generally, if you're exercising for more than 2 minutes, most of the energy for this exercise, whatever it is going to be coming via the oxidative pathway, this oxygen-based pathway, which can use fat to produce energy too. So now you can see that depending on what kind of exercise you're doing, how long you're training, your body is going to need to be fueled differently. You get what I'm saying? If you're weight training, and you're doing kind of short, intense workouts, the pathways are predominantly going to be the first 2, ATP-CP pathway and the glycolytic pathway. So if you're doing like a low carb or keto diet, so you see where I'm coming from? You're going to struggle to push hard because these pathways require either ATP-CP or for the glycolytic pathway, you need glucose, carbs. So if you're doing keto or a low carb diet and you haven't got that ready supply of sugar, then you might not be able to push yourself as hard during a weight training workout. Yeah, there you go. And I've experienced this firsthand. So many years ago when I was doing the whole keto thing like a lot of guys, and I went to the gym and I tried to push myself hard, get a PR on the squat, I thought I was going to black out. And I really had to sit down. I had to go and get some kind of sugar drink. I literally thought I was having a hypo. I thought I was going to faint. That was years back. And the research confirms it too. So for people who are doing like bodybuilding, physique athletes, people who are training specifically to look very athletic, very aesthetic, looking good, fitness models, stuff like that, the research shows that their training results will be suboptimal generally if they're on keto and low carb diets. Yeah, so this is very important, okay? Now, if your goal is to be a long distance runner, and gaining or maintaining muscle is not so much of a priority for you, then you can get away with a low carb diet or a keto diet and a high fat diet and still be quite successful and still get good results. You'll be using that kind of oxidative pathway a lot more, yeah? So the bottom line, if you want to be aesthetic, you want to build muscle, enjoy sports that require quite intense short bursts of energy like weight training, tennis, football, even golf, believe it or not, you need to keep carbs in your diet. Now, if your goal is to get better at endurance fitness, you want to do lots of cardiovascular stuff, protect your heart, which is great, but you're not so bothered about the aesthetics, you want to become a marathon runner, long distance cyclist, all that kind of stuff, then even if you do exclude carbs from your diet and you go for a high fat diet, low carb, or even keto, it can be an option, yeah, and you can still excel, yeah. So there you have it. That's pretty much it. So depending on what exercise modality you want to excel in, you might want to decide based on what I've explained whether you want to keep carbs in your diet, yeah? This is the basics of muscle metabolisms. So you've got to decide your training objective, then you can plan your nutrition accordingly to maximize your results. Okay, you got it, guys? Time to crush those goals. That's it. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Hope you guys have all now become experts at metabolism. Now you know exactly whether keeping carbs in your diet is appropriate for you, or whether, if you've been interested in going low carb and keto, whether that's appropriate for you. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. Do let us know what you thought about it. Please like and subscribe and hit the bell button for notifications. Drop us a comment. Please follow us on all of our social media platforms, and we will see you all in the next video. Don't be late for your appointment, guys. Bye, everyone.